The monster doesn't scream when it dies. It whimpers in a language of cracking iron and freezing steam that no one was ever supposed to hear. Imagine a city of 5 square miles, a labyrinth of silver veins and fire-breathing towers, suddenly falling into a catatonic, Arctic silence. This is Baytown. It is 2026, and the heart of the American machine has just suffered a massive, unexplained stroke. You see the headlines about weather shutdowns and safety first, but those headlines are lying to your face. There is a vibration missing from the Earth today, a hollow space where the pulse of 585,000 barrels of black blood used to flow. Why did the sky over the ship channel turn a bruised, unnatural shade of purple just before the turbines ceased their 100-year-old hum? If that pressure seal fails, we aren't just losing fuel. We're losing the ground we stand on. A shadowed operator whispers into a radio that remains eerily silent. Something is breaking deep inside the throat of the refinery. Something that isn't supposed to freeze, yet it has. The air smells of ozone and dead metal. A scent that signals the end of the world as you know it. You think this is about gas prices? You think this is about a cold snap? You are looking at the shadow, when you should be looking at the knife. A mistake that only persists as long as people stop following how the blade is actually moving by staying subscribed. The nightmare is only beginning, and you are already caught in it. Deep within the bowels of the 3,400-acre labyrinth, a sound is emerging that defies engineering logic. A low, rhythmic thrumming that sounds less like a machine and more like a dying breath. The operators in the control room stare at their screens as the digital ghosts of sensors flicker and fade into the abyss of a total system blackout. They were told the natural gas curtailment was a temporary measure to save the suburbs, a noble sacrifice to keep the heaters running in Houston. But as the temperature inside the primary distillation towers plummeted, the reality became far more sinister than a mere logistics error. We are watching the ghost of 1921 return to claim the steel, one veteran mechanic mutters, his hands trembling as he grips a frozen wrench. Something is moving through the pipes that shouldn't exist, a viscous, frozen sludge that is expanding with the force of a tectonic plate. The ship channel, usually a teeming artery of global commerce, has become a mirror-flat graveyard, its waters reflecting the silent flares that refuse to ignite. Why is the air suddenly thick with the metallic tang of copper? And why are the emergency sirens remaining deathly quiet, despite the catastrophic drop in pressure? The answers are being scrubbed from the official logs as we speak, leaving only the haunting echo of a giant that has forgotten how to wake up. The 7,000 workers who once animated this metallic city are now standing on the periphery, hushed and hollow-eyed. You've been taught to worry about the $3 extra at the pump, but that is a comforting lie designed to keep you from looking at the chemical plant next door. The rubber used to seal your tires, the medical-grade plastics for heart valves, the very lining of the cans that hold your food. All of it is curdling in the dark. This isn't a supply chain issue. It's a total biological failure of the modern world's infrastructure. A single crack in a primary valve isn't just a leak. It's a fatal wound that could take months or years to heal. They're telling us it's just the cold, a voice whispers from behind a security fence. But the cold doesn't make the sensors scream like that. There is a hidden chamber in the olefins plant, a place where the pressure should never drop below a certain threshold. And that threshold was crossed 3 hours ago. What happens when the chemicals that are meant to be liquid decide to become solid? You won't find the answer in an Exxon press release, but you might find it in the sudden, inexplicable shortage of the very things that keep your heart beating. Think back to 2021, to the bodies discovered in frozen bedrooms and the darkness that swallowed the state, and realize that Winter Storm Fern is not a repeat. It is a refinement. The refinery is now a 5-square-mile ice sculpture, a monument to the arrogance of building a titan on a foundation of sand and warm breezes. Every pipe that splits is a scream, muffled by the snowfall, a billion-dollar fracture in the myth of American independence. They are feeding 200 megawatts back to the grid. But is it an act of charity? Or a desperate attempt to bleed off energy before the complex turns into a pressurized bomb? A refinery is supposed to roar, to hiss, to vibrate, with the violence of turning ancient fossils into liquid fire. Now, there is only the wind whistling through the skeletons of cooling towers. If the pilot lights don't catch by midnight, the core will set, a supervisor warns, eyes fixed on a gauge stuck for 6 hours. The set is a death sentence, a state where oil turns to stone inside the pipes, transforming a multi-billion-dollar asset into a useless mountain of scrap metal. We are witnessing the largest unscripted autopsy in industrial history. The patient is still breathing, but only just. The real twist isn't the price of gas. It's that the natural gas wasn't merely cut off, it was diverted to a facility that doesn't appear on any public map. Why would the state prioritize a ghost site over the refinery that keeps the nation moving? As frost thickens on the safety valves, a realization dawns. The freeze was only the catalyst, not the cause. Something was already broken in the heart of Baytown long before the first snowflake fell. A secret buried under a century of humble oil history. You are waiting for the cheap gas to return, but you are waiting for a ghost. The fuel in your tank right now is a relic from a time before the towers went dark. Don't look at the sky, the old-timers warn. Look at the shadows in the water. Something is rising from the Houston ship channel, something cold, hungry, and utterly indifferent to your commute. The darkness over the ship channel isn't a lack of light. It's a lack of truth. Baytown's 100-year myth of invincibility has finally imploded, revealing a hollow core. The 2026 freeze wasn't just a weather event. It was a systemic seizure. While families shivered, a Priority 1 override rerouted natural gas away from the public and into unmarked subterranean vaults. These hidden reserves, born from the old humble oil legacy, feed a global shadow market, rather than your gas tank. As you watched prices climb, the real value was being siphoned into the earth, leaving the refinery to freeze as a convenient cover story. The safety-first narrative masks a mechanical betrayal. Those weeks of repair time are actually used to purge logs of a decade's worth of decay. The 7,000 workers aren't just waiting for the ice to melt, they're being silenced by non-disclosure agreements. Baytown is now a 5-square-mile tombstone. The monster didn't die because of the cold. It was cannibalized by the very hands that built it. The cheap gas is a ghost, and the truth is frozen solid. The safety-first narrative is the perfect mask for a catastrophic mechanical betrayal. When a refinery of this scale goes cold, the molecular structure of the base oils begins to change, turning from a lubricant into a corrosive paste. This is the set that the supervisors fear, the moment the machine becomes its own tomb. The reason the restart takes weeks isn't just because of cracked pipes. It's because the internal sensors were intentionally blinded. We are finding that the freeze provided the perfect window to purge data logs that showed years of deferred maintenance and structural decay. The 7,000 workers aren't just waiting for the ice to melt. They are being forced to sign non-disclosure agreements before they can pick up their tools. A silence that only holds as long as people stop tracking what those contracts are designed to erase by staying subscribed. The ice didn't break the valves, a former operator whispered in an encrypted message. The valves were held together by prayers and duct tape for a decade, and the cold just gave them an excuse to finally quit. The final twist is the most disturbing of all. As the 200 megawatts of electricity are pumped back into the grid to keep the lights on, the refinery is effectively cannibalizing its own nervous system to maintain the illusion of being a good neighbor. This electricity is being pulled from the backup generators meant to keep the distillation towers warm. By the time the public realizes that the cheap gas is never coming back, the Baytown complex will have been hollowed out from the inside. The national average hitting $2.57 is just the opening act of a play where the ending has already been written. You aren't just paying for the freeze. You are paying for a century of secrets that have finally frozen solid. The fuel of the future isn't in those pipes. It's gone, diverted to the highest bidder in the dark, leaving a nation of drivers to fight over the scraps of a ghost city. The towers of Baytown still stand, but they are no longer monuments to progress. They are tombstones of a machine that outlived its own soul. We are living in the silence of the aftermath, waiting for a restart that may never truly come. The next time you see a flickering sign at a gas station, remember the purple sky and the radio silence in the ship channel. The monster didn't die because of the weather. It was killed by the very hands that fed it. It's because the truth is rarely comfortable. The gears are still turning, just not for you. To stay ahead of the next blackout and peel back the layers of the stories they want to bury, hit subscribe. The frost is spreading, and you don't want to be left in the dark.